welcome to In the Static. I'm your host, Brandon Keith Osborne. In the Static is a show where we talk to writers, journalists, photographers, creators of all things, what it's like during the creative process to wait for the picture to be clear, sometimes with uncertainty. And today I have a special guest for you, actually my first true photographer, Craig Semetko. Welcome to the show.
Thank you. I appreciate it. Nice to be here, Brandon.
Yeah, great to have you. So you are a photographer who has this latest book called America Unposed, which just came out this year, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, it came out in like February, March.
Yeah. And so, people describe you as street photographer. How do you feel about that?
Well, I'm not really fond of the term, but it's like the easiest way to sort of explain what I do. People get an understanding, but I'm not relegated to the street.
Yeah, I've always thought that's interesting. Like, oh, you're a food photographer,
right.
And it's like, yeah, exactly. I shoot food, but
right.
It sounds, kind of one directional.
Yeah, restrictive, very much so. And so I, for lack of a better term, I will use that when I'm explaining to a person who's not really into photography, because then they understand, what I do for the most part, unposed, spontaneous, candid stuff.
Right.
Mainly people.
And the godfather of the decisive moment, Henry Cartier-Bresson, I'm sure he's a big inspiration for you.
He was the number one inspiration, and then closely followed by Elliot Erwitt. Try to get
another magnum photographer.
Yeah. I try to get the, in a perfect world, like the composition of Henri Cartier-Bresson and the emotion of Elliot.
Yeah.
Which is usually humor. Funny.
Well, I want to back up a little bit because you have a history in comedy writing. And I think in my research, you grew up in Michigan.
Yep, just south of Detroit.
So tell me a little bit about...
Like the Journey song is South Detroit. Detroit.
I have a friend who swears there's no such thing as South Detroit.
I guess it's south of Detroit.
Right.
Yeah.
I mean, we could get into all the philosophical reasons why. But just tell me kind of how you got your start in comedy writing, if you want to just get me up to speed on that.
Well, I'll try to keep it brief, but, I was just drawn to it as a kid. I always watched, Jackie Gleason show with my dad and, all the stuff in the 70s I was very much into. And I was a funny kid, and somewhere along the way I said, I really would like to make this my career. And so I moved, I went to school in Chicago and then stayed in Chicago. Wanted to get into Second City.
At Northwestern?
Yeah, that's where I went to school, yeah. And did not get into Second City, but ended up working with a comedy improv group that performed for teachers around the country. And I did that for about a year, and then they had we created a thing that worked for corporations. And so I was the writer for them and actor, one of the actors, for many years, actually. That was my living, yeah.
Very cool. And something that stood out to me, you have a master's degree in consciousness studies.
Yes.
And so when I read that, I was like, first of all, what the hell is consciousness studies? And it sounds so awesome.
Yeah, well, it was the study of, consciousness, which is nobody can really define. So that's my easy answer. But, what I learned about was you learn about the physics of it, and also you learn about all the different religions and how their origin stories are similar and stuff, but for the main part, it's mainly looking at what is consciousness, and they really don't know ultimately, but you're sort of learning about all the different tangential things about consciousness. Like, if that makes any sense.
No, it's sort of like in body, out of body, and like what turned the light on,
Yeah, so it's pretty hooey, but it's a long story. Again, I got a million of them, and they're all an hour long, but I'll keep this short. It just so happened that the president of this university happened to live in my building at the time, and we'd see each other working out all the time. In fact, the way this worked out was he would come in, I'd be working out, and I'd say, "Hey, how are you?" And he would drop some like ancient pearl of wisdom, like, Moses said, or that, I'm like, whoa, where's that coming from? And so I saw this guy 2 or 3 times, always said something profound, like as a way of hello. And then my father passed away, and I was extremely close to my dad. And I had told my mom and dad about this guy and how he would say these profound things, and he was always coming in the workout area where I was. And then my dad died, and I remembered I was so upset. I was down there on an elliptical going, Dad, I would like to know if you're still here in some form, on some plane, in some way. Do you even exist? And at that moment, this guy walked in.
No shit.
I swear to God, he walked in the door, and I went, oh my God. And I said to him, look, I don't want to lay anything too heavy on you here, but just listen to what just happened. And I told him that. And I said, so, I was hoping for a sign from my dad. And he goes, well, I guess I'm as good a sign as any. And then we became very good friends after that. And he was the president of this place. And he said, you sound like a candidate that you might be interested in this consciousness studies degree. And I was, and I did it. Of course, it took me 7 years. Well, yeah, they evicted me or whatever you want to call it because I didn't do the thing in time. Because I was driving around the country working on this book, actually. And I just got sidetracked, But I came around and got it, and I actually got the official degree. So
Yeah, so does the philosophy, the stuff that you studied in consciousness studies, inform your photographic work? I'm sure it does in some...
Subconsciously, I'm sure that it does. I mean, I'm not thinking about it when I'm taking the picture, but I'm not really thinking about anything when I'm taking the picture. That's the goal.
Yeah. So,
as you probably well know, you want to just be in the moment and not be.
Yeah, and so I think I mentioned to you that I got my start shooting music and like live shows, and I'd be shooting my friend's band. And they'd get off stage and they'd say, how did we sound? And I'd say, I have no freaking clue.
You were in another place.
Yeah, I was in a completely different world. And it was a visual world. And sure, there was a soundtrack to it, but it wasn't the music that they were playing for the crowd. I can tell you that because...
And that's like a form of, altered consciousness, I mean, like, I remember this one book we read, which I'll never tell you the guy's, the author's name, because the last name is like all consonants. I think it was like no vowels, but it was called Flow. It's an excellent book. And basically it goes through a bunch of different sort of occupations where people have to have very intense concentration, like neurosurgeons and stuff like that. And the people that reported to be the most content and happy with their jobs are the people that had the most concentration in their jobs. And when you're in this flow state, you sort of forget time, you forget to eat. And those are 2 very big things for me.
Yeah, me too.
I used to remember, like, because I was still doing the comedy then when I was taking this. And I was trying to think of what flow states work for me. And it's always, the first thing that always came to mind was being on stage and being aware of the audience and aware of the applause, but not really lost in it. You know what I mean? Like it got to be like a wave of laughter, and it's sort of like riding the wave of this laughter and then waiting for it to die down a little bit and then say another punchline right there, But it was a flow state where I was just doing nothing. It was me and the audience and the other actors. It was like nothing else to think about.
Yeah, that's you kind of walked right into where I was heading with the sort of comedy as like a weird cousin of photography, because it's about timing and it's about withholding information, until the moment you want to reveal, right? And so that's kind of like a muscle you flexed in your work and your career. Or?
Totally, yeah. I mean, it's really it's all about rhythm. You know what I mean? It's like musical to me, as is comedy. Comedy is very musical. Being in the flow as a photographer, if you're out on the street, is very musical. It's all got a rhythm to it. In fact, oftentimes I used to. I haven't been shooting a lot lately. You know, put in some earplugs and get something going that was, you know, give me a good rhythm, and I just get it. It put me in a good mood, and I mean, it's really interesting. If you're doing street photography, if you're not in a good mood and open and receptive, you might as well just go home for the day, you know, because it just, for me, it never worked that way. I had to be in the right state of mind.
Interesting. So there's the line from Almost Famous where he's like, do you have to be sad to write a sad song? So like, if you're sad and you take your camera out on the street, are you relegated to take sad photos? You know?
Well, that's an interesting question. You know, as I was saying, my previous sentence or two, I'm going to contradict right now because I was, and it's a specific image. It's not in that book, so we can't show everybody. But I was in Paris, and I was. This was when I was kind of just starting out, and I was counting my pennies. All right, and I knew that I was shooting film, and I probably shot 8 or 10 rolls of film that day, and I knew that I didn't have anything good. And I started doing the math. It's like every picture is like a quarter, you know, and this and that. And then I said, what am I even doing here? You know what I mean? Like, I don't know what I'm doing. Obviously, I suck, you know. And I just went into this spiral of, like, I can't do this. This is clearly out of my bailiwick, right? And no sooner did I say this, I'm giving up. I looked up, and this guy comes walking right in front of me, an older guy, in a suit and a tie. And I've since realized, which I didn't know at the time, but it's sort of a trigger for me if I see somebody dressed nicely, because nobody wears suits and ties anymore, you know, when they're just out walking around. I get alerted to it, because at that time, was shooting in black and white, very influenced by Cartier-Bresson. I love to take pictures that looked like they could have been taken in 1940 as well as 2010 or something. So this guy walks right past me, and there's a statue. This is right at the Louvre Museum. And the statue has his arms behind him, and he's looking down like this. And the guy walks past him, and his arms are behind him in the same pose as the statue. And the statue's looking down at him, and I got 3 shots off. One was too early, one was too late, but the middle one nailed it. And I never would have taken the picture unless I was having a nervous breakdown, right? I noticed the guy even in my sort of self-deprecation and depression, which was good. I still had the ability to notice, I guess.
Well, yeah. And
he walked right in front of me. I could not notice him, right?
But what's interesting, what I hear from that is that one shot saved the 8 rolls that you had already shot.
All of a sudden, it all became worth it.
Yeah, exactly.
Apparently, I know what I'm doing. You know.
In fact, I'm the greatest artist ever, and I should just do this for the rest of my life.
You got the picture. You know how this goes.
Yeah,
right.
It's weird. I must be a photographer too.
It's totally the roller coaster that we're on. You know?
Yeah. So tell me about, because you graduate college and you go into comedy writing and that whole career. So you picked up the camera. I hesitate to say late. There's no late time to pick up a camera, but not everybody just goes, well, I'm gonna do this thing and be extraordinary at it. And it seems like that's exactly what you did. So.
Well, I'll tell you a couple of things. First of all, this happened as a result of a great gig that I had in the year 2000 for Motorola. And it took me around the world, England, Ireland, Japan, China, and all over the United States. And I didn't even own a camera. And I thought, there's a good likelihood that I'm not going to ever be in some of these places again, so I ought to buy a camera. So I bought a sort of a Nikon 6006, if anybody remembers what that is. It's like the equivalent of a Canon Rebel or something back then. So I bought that with the kit lens, and I went on my trip. And while I was outside of Shanghai once, I was standing on a bridge, and these 2 women, peasants, came by in a canoe, with a bunch of brush on the front, and they had, it was very drab colors, and one had like an orange and one had a yellow top on, so it kind of popped. And when I saw it, I'm like, well, this is National Geographic material. I should really be, it wasn't, but at the time it seemed pretty good to me. Well, there was a place I used to take my my film to get it developed when I was just starting out. And the woman who developed it, I didn't really know them that well, but she came out literally from behind where she worked in the dark room or whatever, and she said, Craig, looking at your stuff here from overseas, you have a really good eye. Now this, to me, was, monumental. I was just taking pictures for, I don't know, documentation or memory or whatever. But that one sentence sort of inspired me to keep doing it. So my next thought was, well, I need a big zoom lens, because then I'll be a really professional photographer.
Of course, you need to buy all the stuff
Right,
now.
exactly. And so I went to buy this. I was back in Hong Kong. I went to buy this zoom lens, and everything was gray market, and I didn't know what I was doing. And I walked into this one store, ubiquitous Canon, Nikon signs, but one of them had Leica on it, and I didn't know. I'd never heard of Leica, and didn't know what it was, and I didn't know how to pronounce it either. And the guy that was in there, he just sized me up and looked at me, and he could tell I was a neophyte. He just looked at me like, this guy doesn't know. He's a tourist. And he acted that way. He was very rude, because I asked him about this lens, and he showed me the lens. And I said, well, what about these down here, these Leicas? And the guy goes, in a heavy accent, he's like, you're saying it wrong. It's Leica, And he goes, very expensive, very complicated, not for you.
Not for you.
Yeah, so that was I'm like, okay, that's a heck of a sales pitch. I'm going to leave, but thanks anyway. And I waited till I got back to America, and I went to Sammy's camera to buy this lens. And the salesman said, well, let me ask you this. What do you like to shoot? And I had never thought about that, And I said, well, give me a minute. And I went downstairs and thought about this for a while. And I came up and I said, I like to photograph people and I like to travel. And he goes, have you ever thought about a Leica? Just like Satan, And I'm like,
Because
yeah.
we work on commission here.
I go, yeah, I have thought about them. They're very expensive, very complicated, not for me. And anyway, I walked out of there with a Leica M and a 35 millimeter lens. Another good one. I said, well, I don't know. What should I get, a 35 or a 50? He goes, it doesn't matter. Either one. In 2 weeks, you'll be back for the other one anyway. He was pretty cheeky. That guy's still a good friend of mine today, and that's from the year 2000. Yeah, he was very helpful. He taught me how to use that camera, because I had no idea how to use it. And I came back, he said, he said, look, here, I go, I don't make decisions like this offhandedly. I got to think about it. He says, here, I understand. Take these brochures, go home. You won't sleep tonight, and I'll see you tomorrow. I'm like, all right, this guy's got a sales pitch. But he was right. I went home. I looked through this brochure, had an interview with Cartier-Bresson, who I had no idea who this guy was. But I saw his pictures, and I liked his philosophy, and I'm like, I want to be like this dude. I went back in the next day. I said, all right, you got me. Here I am. Tell me I'm not going to regret this, because it's a lot of money. And he said, the only way you'll regret it is if you don't use it. Yeah. And I just made a decision right there. I was going to use the hell out of it. And, here we are.
Here you are. Your book is, you're like a Leica ambassador now, right? Or
That's
sponsored by Leica?
Actually, I don't know if I'm a Leica ambassador. That's a kind of a wishy-washy term. They used to have it only in Europe. I don't know if it even exists in America. But the fact is, I use Leica. I'm good friends with the people at Leica. And, I'd say that's my extent. Yeah. I don't know that I'm not official. I don't get like a check from them or anything like that.
You're on the newsletter?
Occasionally they cover me, yeah.
Okay.
But I have a great relationship with them. I don't mean to diminish it, but I don't think I'm going to. I've seen articles that have referred to me as that, but I've never been. I've never had somebody put a sword over my shoulder and say you're now an ambassador.
Yeah. Well, maybe you're being modest because I think in my research it said Leica ambassador somewhere in there. So we'll call it a win.
Okay.
So I read also about you had a moment in India where you're talking about the colors that you photographed. And I had the opportunity to go to Bangladesh, and I think I had a similar experience where they were wearing traditional oranges and reds and things, and there was a little boy in between, like a mother and maybe an aunt or somebody, and he just looked at me framed by those colors, and it was like life-changing. I had the same exact thing. I was like, look at those colors. This is National Geographic. I'm going to be famous.
Right.
And so I guess I say that because I can totally understand the feeling of that catching fire and wanting to shoot more. And
That's what it did. That's what it did. And to your sort of point about the fact that I started later in life, I mean, that was 40. I was 40 when I got my first camera, really, a Leica. And when I bought that Leica, or 2 months shy of 40. And years later, I was speaking at a big camera event in Bergen County, New Jersey, and there were other photographers speaking, and the gentleman, his name, I'm losing it, but he was Bill Clinton's photographer for at least, I think, his first 4 years. And he spoke, and I listened to his talk, and apparently he listened to mine. And he said to me afterwards, he said, Craig, your story's not that unusual. I go, it's not. I would have thought that's pretty unusual to be 40. He goes, no, the aspect, he goes, I've actually got a couple of good friends that didn't start shooting till they were 40, and they had sort of immediate success. And I said, wow, I guess maybe I'm not alone. I go, why do you think that is? He goes, well, the answer is clear. He says, by the time you're 40, you have a world view. And you don't have to spend any time trying to figure out your style or what you want to shoot, which is, you've probably been around people or taught classes or whatever. That's like the number one thing. I don't know what to shoot. I don't have a style.
You don't have a voice.
I don't have a voice. I don't know what direction I want to go in. He said, but when these guys are 40, they just came out shooting, and that same with me. But I had spent my life in comedy. So if you look at my first book, there's some really funny pictures in there. It's a strong theme of humor in it. It's called Unposed for those of you who are looking for it.
Yeah. And I think that's exactly right, because I arguably have been taking pictures since I was like, 15 or 16. But I didn't know it's what I wanted to do until I was 19, which, you go, what? You knew what you wanted to do at 19? That sounds great and fantastic. But, I was 19. I was a kid. I had no clue. I just, I thought I was going to be the next big thing. And every year until now I'm in my 40s. And I know what you mean, because with life experience, all that experience gets informed into what you're looking at, and you have an opinion on things, and basically what you like has different meaning than when it did when you're young. Not to say that you can't come out of the gates at 19 and shoot really beautiful work and know exactly what you want to do, but I think that life experience element, and especially like I was talking about before, how comedy is kind of this weird cousin of photography if you think about it, with the timing and the withholding information, or there's a weird control about it, right? Like, I'm guiding you on this experience. I'm showing you what I want you to see, and hopefully you get it,
Yeah, well, it's, clearly. The notion that, starting late and having that worldview is very, it really was illuminating when he said that. It didn't occur to me, but I just came out of the gate with my worldview, which is I look at things ironically and the absurdity of it, and sometimes the surrealistic nature of it. That's how I see it originally, out of the box when I get out of bed, whatever. It all seems a little different to me.
Yeah, life as Craig sees it, right?
Yeah, right.
So tell me a little bit about Elliot Erwitt and how you made that connection.
Well, it was through Leica, and I was working on this book. I mean, this book started right after my first book came out, which was Unposed. And I probably started this in 2010 or 2011, and was working on it for a while. And then Leica had a big anniversary, and they wanted to have a big, a to-do about it, which entailed their photographer people. The thing I like about Leica, one of the many things is they care about what comes out of the camera as much as the making of the camera and selling the camera. They really do. They really do have relationships and love photography and photographers. And I appreciate that. And now I've lost my train of thought. What was the question again?
We were talking about Erwitt.
Oh, right. And so they had a big exhibition they were going to do, a big project, and it was called the 10 by 10 project. And they chose 10 photographers from around the world, and each was tasked with shooting 10 images so that they'd have 10 photographers, 100 images for the 100 years of Leica camera. It was the 100-year anniversary. And they sort of paired us with our artistic fathers. And they chose Elliot for me because, they said, you both shoot in black and white, you both shoot funny stuff, and you both like dogs. So,
match made in heaven.
Right. So I'm like, that's fine. I have no problem with that. And so we could choose to do whatever we want, the subject, whatever we wanted. Well, it turns out my sister had this a scholarship to go to India. She was going to be there for 5 months with my 2 nieces. And I said, well, heck, I'll go to India. I've never been there before. I'll have a free place to stay. So I went to India to do this project. And when I came back, I realized, the project went very well. And I met Elliot. Elliot was there. And I'm not sure if I had met him before that or not. No, wait a minute. Yes, of course I had. Because my first book, I keep going back, Unposed, he had just come out with a book called Elliot Erwitt's Paris. And we both had the same publisher, Tenois. And they lined up a book signing for us. So I had a book signing with Elliot Erwitt right off the bat. And we're there at ICP doing this, and it was hilarious because, he had a line out the door like down 6th Avenue, and I had like 2 guys standing there like, where's the cheese balls? And
The guys who didn't want to wait in the long line.
Well, yeah, they were like going to cut in. Nobody cared about my book, right? But anyway, sitting there with Elliot over a period of an hour and a half, he gave me a few gems. One was, make sure you sign every book, that way they can't return them, which was a good advice, and other stuff. But he was a great guy, and he didn't suffer fools gladly. But I remember I met him again for the next time at this 100th anniversary deal. And to show you a sense of humor, I'm standing there with him, and people are taking pictures of us and everything, and they're all talking about how funny his pictures were, right? And I said, he didn't just take funny pictures, okay? He's got a lot of very emotional, poignant pictures. And I talk about this for maybe, 15, 20 seconds, and Elliot goes, I'm tearing up. He's just a complete smartass. It was very funny. And
like in a sarcastic
right, totally sarcastic. Like, okay, kid, shut up. I think we all know what kind of pictures I've taken. I don't need you to promote my stuff. It was very funny.
Well, I'm sure he felt good that you were going to bat for him.
I don't know that he needed it, is my point.
Yeah.
He's kind of a icon legend. But I don't like that when people, it's like they didn't look at his whole body of work. He's known for his funny pictures of dogs and stuff. But he was a great photographer. and really some very poignant, great stuff. You know, he took iconic pictures. You know, I think he took a picture of that picture of John at his dad's funeral to Kennedy. You know, like got a picture of Nixon pounding into Khrushchev's chest. You know, that picture. Anyway, the guy was a great photographer. Really an inspiration, total inspiration for me. And that's how that came about. And as a result, I realized I had enough work to make a book, not just a project. So then I got the next book made, India Unposed. I'm not too creative on my titles. I just keep Unposed here, there, and everywhere.
It's consistency.
Right. And yeah, that turned out, but that really sidetracked me from this, which I finally got back to years later, and it's been like an ongoing project, and I guess we can talk about that later. I ramble, so I'm not sure I even answered your question.
Totally fine. I was just asking about Irwit and kind of the process. Like when you go out and take these pictures, you mentioned before you kind of have a soundtrack. Do you put in headphones? And
not all the time, but I certainly have it. I have it going on in my head,
yeah.
And I will take occasionally small ones, not big ones, because then you're worried about people coming up and grabbing them.
So I'm curious for people who shoot street and, you know, the decisive moment, sometimes you can wait for that for a long time. And for me, sometimes I'll be like, I can't make a good picture out of anything that's around me right now. Or I'll talk myself out of it. I'll say, yeah, I can take a picture of that, but it's not good enough to show anybody, you know. So like, how much time are you spending just exploring cities and places?
So much time.
So much time.
So much time.
Yeah.
You know, and I've thought about that, you know, lately. I spent a lot of time. I mean, and that's the key. You sort of have to. And I realize that it's not easy for people that have, you know, maybe a wife and kids, or, you know. But that's probably why I don't have a wife and kids, because I spend so much time walking around the street and not, you know, meeting people or whatever. You know, I was just trying to get pictures. So it's always a trade-off. But yeah, it's an enormous time suck. You know, you're out there, you got to go burn through the shoe leather.
And I think I read somewhere where you come to terms with the word, I don't want to look like a tourist with a camera. You know, what's kind of your thoughts around taking a camera out in public? And you're this artist who makes these great pictures, but to everybody else around you, that you're just this tourist with a camera, right?
Well, the funny thing is, I probably said that in the context of when I was young, and I was with my family, and we would go on a trip somewhere, and my dad had a camera, and I was.
It's kind of dorky.
Yeah, I thought it was kind of. My dad was not a dorky guy at all, but he's sitting there trying to take pictures, and I just wish to God he had lived long enough that I, you know, could have really shown him some tips that would have made his photography a lot better. But I just didn't want to look like a tourist. I bragged about it. I just remember it all up here. I don't need to be out like this. And then ironically, once I got this Leica, it was absurd. I never went anywhere without the camera around my neck. And my dad at one point said, no wonder you don't have a girlfriend. You got that damn camera glued to your forehead all the time. Nobody can even see your face. He was right. I was just obsessed with this thing. And as a result, you know, I mean, good things happen, but, you know, you make some sacrifices along the way. It's an enormous use of your time. And it's depressing when you spend an entire day and you know you didn't get anything. But it's not unlike golf. If all you got to do is get one shot that is good and brings you back out, you know. So that was the origin of that. I didn't want to look like a tourist, and the irony is now I take it everywhere. And when I say now, I did up until a few years ago, you know, and I've medical reasons I haven't been. In fact, I was going to bring this camera today, and I walked out without it. I just forgot. I never would have forgot before.
Well, I might have a surprise for you later.
Oh.
But,
You new camera?
so yeah, you mentioned that a little bit earlier. If you're comfortable talking about how you're not shooting as much anymore and how much time it takes you to travel these streets, but you've had some health things that have kept you from that, if I'm not mistaken. Can you share a little bit about that? Or?
Yeah, sure. You know, I don't know when I started showing these symptoms, but I can remember specifically giving a talk in Singapore, and I started coughing, and I kind of couldn't stop coughing. You know, and everybody's like concerned. Are you all right? I'll be fine. I'll be fine. You know, and I got through it, but it was noticeable, you know, and this cough persisted, and I finally got it checked out, and they didn't know what it was, and then it turns out I had pulmonary lung fibrosis, which is not a good thing to have, and not a good prognosis. And so it was you're going to need a lung transplant, or else this is it. That's your choice. You know, some people don't want to do it, but we just tell you have a choice.
When did you get this news?
When I was probably, I don't know, 61 or something, 62, somewhere in there. You know, and it was like a 3 to 5 year thing. And then you're going to go. So I have great empathy for people that, get bad news like that now, because that was bad news, obviously. But it was sort of just far out enough that it was just abstract, and it wasn't like you have 6 months, 3 to 5 years. I didn't sleep well, but still, at least it was abstract, and it was far away enough that I didn't have to confront it 100%, or at least I thought I didn't. Anyway, ended up being on the list after being sick for, a year and a half, 2 years, having to walk around with oxygen. And that kind of puts a damper on street photography right there, when it's just a problem. It's just much more difficult. Mm. And so I got on the list. You got to stay within, 5 miles of the hospital or something like that. And you got to be there within an hour or 2 hours when they call. And they could call anytime, day or night. And they called once, and I went down there and got all prepped and ready. They came in and they said, the lungs are bad. It's off. I'm like, okay. And then 3 or 4 months after that, same thing. I got the call, got down there as fast as I could, and lungs were bad and didn't work. So I was quite discouraged, wondering how long this was going to continue. And that was like in September or something. And by December of 2023, I was quite ill. I was really not in good shape. And I remember trying to get out of bed and get to the bathroom, and my oxygen at this point was up to 10, One thing, mine goes to 11. Mine only went to 10. And I had to, I realized I got to call the doctor, and they said, come into the hospital right now. So they admitted me, and I asked someone like, well, what's the story here? How long do you think I'll have to wait? And they were just, very nonchalant and straight about it. They're like, yeah, we've had people have to wait in the ICU with an intubated for a year. Yeah. And I was like, you got to be kidding me. And 4 days later, a great set of lungs came in, and I was in line, and they did a surgery like that day.
Double lung transplant.
Double lung transplant.
Man, that's a trip.
Yeah, it was crazy that it was. I think it was 4 days. I hardly had to wait at all. It was remarkable. But I was pretty sick, and they move you up the list the sicker you are. I was really sick, and I didn't realize how sick I was until later. I asked some doctors, and I could have checked out pretty quickly, I think. So it was an extraordinary serendipitous thing that these lungs arrived. You know, I just got very lucky.
Talk about consciousness studies. I mean,
Well, you know, I had to write, you know, a thesis and a long paper for that to get that degree, and my thesis and my paper was called like serendipity and synchronicity in photography, and mine specifically, and it was really all about the concept of serendipity, like, you know, a positive, surprising, unexpected thing that you just didn't expect to have happened, you know.
it's kind of like the 8 rolls of trash frames, and then you get that one frame. Right?
I'll give you another example. I was in Varanasi, India, and like the holiest city in India. Like people, when they die, they want to die in Varanasi. It's like the closest thing. Excuse me. Sorry about that.
You're fine. There's no microphone police.
Okay. And so it's a very holy place, and there's a real heavy feeling of spirituality when you're there. You can sort of feel it. It's almost palpable. And I remember walking along, and there was this wall with this sort of epic poem written on it that a guy had done by hand. And it was a very long poem. It was like an epic poem. And it was it covered this whole, you know, not huge wall, but a small wall. Had some steps up to it. And I thought, well, this is, you know, interesting. I'm going to take a picture just to document the words, because it was really kind of heavy. I mean, it was called Ask Yourself, Who Am I? And it was, am I an actor? Am I a writer? Am I a dentist? Am I a, you know, and then it really was about consciousness is what it was. So I took a picture and I went, okay, I got the picture. And I thought, you know, this would be an interesting picture if something would fill up this empty left quadrant, because you know, the wall went like this and it left this part open. And I go, you know, if there were a cloud or just heavy, something big up here. And no sooner did this thought go across my little brain than a dog shot into the frame. I mean, I saw this black blur come flying in, and the dog stood up on top of the wall like this, like, here I am.
Perched.
Take the damn picture. And he looked right at me. And I got 2 frames off, and he turned around and took off just as fast as he came up. And it gave me total goosebumps. I mean, I stood there like, what just happened, you know? And I don't know what just happened, but this dog showed up right when I asked for something to show up. And it was really kind of a heavy thing at the time, you know, given the context of where I was and reading the poem. And it's, you know, it turned out to be, you know, people really like this photograph, you know. Later on, I found out that a dog, because when I was writing the thesis, I was trying to find out, like, is there any meaning behind a dog? And I bought this book of symbols and symbolism. And a dog symbolizes sort of the gateway between Earth and the thereafter. And that, like, added a whole other level of meaning to it for me, you know. So I rely a lot on serendipity. I have my entire life. I've been extremely lucky. You know, some might say, well, it's not too lucky getting lung fibrosis, and it wasn't. But you know what? Here I am talking to you.
Yeah.
Breathing a little bit heavy.
It's totally
I'm not a perv. It's just
I'm
I have a little, you know, just trying to get through this thing.
Yeah, and you're comedic about it too, which I love. And
well, yeah, I'd show you my scar, but nobody really wants to see the torso attached to it, you know. So
well, it's mostly an audio format podcast.
Oh, okay, good.
Yeah, so I guess how, if you don't mind me asking, how do you wrap your mind around the limitations to go out and shoot the way that you did? And I'll share just a personal thing. I lost the vision in my left eye.
Permanently?
I got a thing called keratoconus, and it's the cornea morphs out into a cone and refracts the light so bad that I was completely blind. Early on in my career, I thought my career was over as a photographer. I was like, how can you be a blind photographer? You know, but, you know, my mom sent me like YouTube videos on these guys who,
excuse me,
Okay. She sent me. She's like, it's not over. You know, there's blind photographers out there. Anyway, I got a cornea transplant.
Oh, wow.
So we're transplant buddies. Yours is a little bit more intense than mine.
But still, I mean,
Yeah.
you know, it's a transplant.
I mean,
and it's heavy duty.
I had to learn how to shoot with my opposite eye, and you know, like focusing. I've had trouble with that still, and missing focus and being really upset with myself because, like, I know in my head I got the timing, I got the frame, and I look back and it's soft, and so I can empathize and sympathize with you a little bit, where it's like the thing that I used to do.
Excuse me. I'm going to just take a cough drop here.
Yeah,
Go
you're
ahead.
fine. But the thing that you used to do, which is walk streets endlessly looking for photos, you can't do that anymore. So how do you kind of unpack that?
Well, I'm still working through it because coincidentally, one of the side effects from taking prednisone, which is a steroid that I've been on for 3 years, it gives you cataracts. And what you just described is like what's going on in my eyes right now. I have a hard time-
Cataracts make it cloudy, right?
There's like a film over your eyes.
Yeah,
And
exactly.
forgive me, I'm having a hard time all of a
You're
sudden.
okay. Take your time. When people ask me about what it's like, I often use the like if you look through a windshield in the rain without windshield wipers and the lights are blown out, like that's what it looks like.
Yeah, that's not unlike what I'm going through right now. And what you described, I was in this Leica store. I had this fantastic opening of my work in April, the end of April. And the next day I was there looking at cameras and stuff. And I was holding up this new lens and trying to focus it. I couldn't focus it, and I had to go to the other eye. And I didn't know what was going on. I've since realized I have these cataracts from this medication that I'm on. I'm gonna have them operated on in September, and I can't wait because right now I'm a menace out there on the road. But it's really a problem. But that's just recent. The overarching thing for me is. This sounds weird, but another effect of the medication I'm on is more susceptibility to melanoma.
Something like that.
Because I take 20 drugs a day in the morning and then maybe 10 at night or something. Pills. And, it's a lot, and there's a whole lot of upkeep and maintenance. And sometimes you just feel tired, and then I've got this layer of worrying about the sun, all the time. And that's all I did. I was out in the sun all day,
Yeah.
Southern California.
India.
And India, for God's sake. Oh, man. And it's really hard to force myself to get out there, Like last year, I know this sounds funny, but Leica had another 100-year celebration. I'm like, how many of these
You're
are you
200
gonna
years
have?
old.
I'm like, how many of these are you going to have? But they were celebrating the 100 year of the Leica M camera, I think. Something like that. I'm not sure what it was. But anyway, I went to this event. I went with my niece, Sophia. She was, very extremely helpful and always a lot of fun. We had a great time. But, that was like the first time I started taking pictures again because I just felt like I was in that environment. Everybody had a camera. I just took some pictures during our trip out there. But, since then I've got a lot of other stuff going on. I moved to get closer to the hospital and a little bit better air and a nice place to walk and everything. So, that's my excuse for having such a messed up place right now.
I was gonna say you can go to like Iceland, right?
That's a good idea. Yeah, but right now I just tell everybody, basically I just moved and I'm rehabbing the apartment. Please excuse the mess, which is a great excuse. I heard a story once about Marlon Brando, the actor, when he was very young. He was rooming in New York with a guy named Wally Cox. Probably nobody knows who this is, but he was a complete opposite. You know, he's like a dork. He had a high
odd couple.
Total odd couple, but they were apparently great friends. And what they did was they painted one wall and kept some paint cans out, and then they just left it like that. So whenever they had girls come over or whatever, they said, "Please excuse the mess, but we're in the middle of remodeling." And so they could be as messy as they wanted. So that's my excuse as well. So it's working so far.
Smart. Do you find yourself drawn to different subject matters now when you pull out your camera?
You know, that's interesting because I was sort of going through a crisis before I got sick.
Any aspirations to start studio work?
Well, sort of like I joke, like maybe now with this, you know, the situation I'm in, maybe I'll just do nothing but posed pictures. My next 3 books will be all called Posed. You know, posed from my studio.
You heard it here. That's a genius idea. You got to do 3 books called Posed.
Right.
And like all of them have to be meticulously directed.
Every little bit, you know. And that is something that appeals to me. But, you know, I'm trying to think of different. I felt like I had hit the wall. You know, I creatively, I felt like I'd kind of done everything I wanted to do with regard to street photography, and also it was getting very difficult. Everybody's got a phone. It's like hard to get a picture without somebody staring at their phone, you know.
Yeah, I heard someone else, I forget who, but they talked about that. Like everybody's looking at their phone, and so there's just like no more interesting picture. Like you can't take pictures of people anymore. 'Cause they're just staring at their phone.
They're staring at the phone, which takes them out of it. You know, like
they're not there.
They're not there.
Yeah.
Their consciousness is focused on something else. Like Joel Meyerowitz might have been. He said like the iPhone has taken the sexiness out of the street.
Yeah.
Like people aren't flirting, they aren't meeting, they aren't fighting, they're, you know, doing whatever we would do before we had phones to stare at all the time.
Oh, that's interesting. Yeah.
So I got kind of to the point where I'm like, okay, you know, I don't have the time or the energy to keep trying to find something interesting.
Especially when it's hard, yeah.
Try taking, you know, a genuinely, you know, absurd or funny picture. It's really difficult. I would say it takes twice as much time as just going out and, you know, taking pictures. It's really difficult, and now it's almost impossible because, like I said, you know, everybody's staring at their phone.
And there's an awareness of people of being watched in almost like the surveillance state. And so when you point your camera at somebody, it you know, there's a different emotion with that too.
100%. You know, they're like, "Why are you taking my picture? Erase that picture." You know, like you have no right to take my picture. And you get this, you know. I'm like, "Excuse me, but I have every right to take your picture." You know, at least today. I don't know what they're going to do in a week in this country, but right now we're in a public spot. You have no expectation of privacy. I'm allowed to take your picture. You know, they don't want to hear that, or they don't believe that, or whatever. And, you know, it just becomes confrontational. And, yeah, everybody's in this heightened state of, "Why are you taking my picture?" And
well, in like the 80s or something, if you took someone's picture, you know, it was like, "Oh, haha, I saw you do that." But now it's like you might be worried you're going to end up on some blog somewhere and, you know, or in somebody's comment sections or turned into a meme or, you know, so there's all...
I mean, I understand that, you know. I mean, I from their standpoint, but I don't like it when they tell me I don't have the right to do something that I have the right to do, you know, and said, "You took my picture, didn't you?" And I'm like, "No, I didn't." And depending on what mood I'm in at that particular moment, I might say something, you know, a little smart ass, you know, like, "Did you just take my picture?" You know, I'm like, "Don't flatter yourself, you know, and move on. I got better things to take pictures of," you know, because if they are too confrontational like that, I don't deal with it well.
Yeah, those people don't make good pictures anyway.
They don't. No, they don't.
So, but you did an amazing job with this book, America Unposed. and you can buy it online. I went into the Leica store in West Hollywood and picked up this copy, and it's over a few years of you just doing a road trip. You want to talk about this book a little bit, or?
Yeah, sure. First of all, it has not been up on my website because I didn't get my shipment of books. There was a mistake that was made overseas, and I finally just got a bunch of books. So I don't know when this is going to air, but hopefully by the time this airs,
probably tomorrow.
Oh my goodness. Okay, that's pretty quick. Very soon you'll be able to buy this on my website, like I would say within a week. And I can send signed copies, and you can buy it directly from my website. But anyway, the book itself was, the thing that really hit me after that first book came out. I was like, there it is. I've arrived. I'm now a photographer. I changed my card from actor to photographer. I go, I better. I mean, I have a book out now. But I figured that was kind of it. Maybe I'd go back to acting or something.
You never thought about hyphenating it, like actor, photographer?
No, I'm very either or guy, very black and white. And somebody said to me like that, more than one person said to me, well, what's your next project? I'm like, my next project is to like have a couple of drinks and enjoy the fact that I had a book made with an intro by Elliot Erwitt. Like that's all beyond my wildest dreams right there. So give me some time. Anyway, I finally came up with this idea because I follow politics and everything, and I was going to do this book starting like on the 4th of July, I guess it would have been 11, or 2012 or whatever the time frame was, and go follow for 13 months until the inauguration of the next president. And this is going to be, it would have been like, it turned out to be Obama's, I believe, second inauguration. But I was just going to go drive around for like a 12, 13-month period of time. And like I said, in the middle of this, I got sidetracked by the India project. So that whole concept of time got put aside, kind of went off the rails. And I just...
You got Einsteined.
I got Einsteined right on the side of the head. And I just kind of went with it whenever I got back to it. I was always looking for stuff that was appropriate for America. Got back on the road. If I was in Chicago, I'd concentrate there. LA, I'd concentrate there. But it took a long time, and I had a publisher lined up. Everything was go. They were sending me test prints to make sure that they were, I was happy with it. And I got this email from the gentleman who owned the publishing company. He was a great guy, and he was a fan of mine. And he approached me to do my book. He wanted to do the books. And here we were, like right down to it. And he said, "Listen, Craig, I have some sort of awkward news. I sold the company to Macmillan, and Macmillan doesn't want to do these kind of books." And I got this. I looked at the date. I got this while I was in the hospital waiting for this transplant, like November 30th or the 1st of December. And I'm like, oh, man, I didn't need to read this before I'm going in for a lung transplant. So it was really depressing. I lost this, publisher, because I thought, I don't even know how to go about getting this made. I went to my original publisher, and they had changed hands, and I didn't have a relationship really anymore with them. And I started thinking about it. I just kept it in the back of my mind. And when I went to that event a year ago, June, that I was telling you about in Germany, and somebody told me, you should have Leica published. I go, what do you mean? They don't do that. They go, well, LFI, Leica Photography International, prints it, but Leica publishes it. They're doing books occasionally now. So like I said, I'm very friendly with a lot of the folks at Leica. So I talked with one over at dinner, and she said, well, that sounds like a great idea. Let me run it by the people, and we'll get back to you. Less than a week later, she got back to me and said, we're going to do this. Because I had everything laid out, it was perfect to be able to send them. And they said, we're going to do it. And so this, serendipity once again.
I was going to say, you have this track record of no light at the end of the tunnel, and then somebody flips the light switch on.
I've never heard it put that way. That's awesome. I love that. Yeah. But yeah, in everything, right up to the living and dying situation.
It gives you a sense of humility. And
It sure does.
well, this book is fantastic, and I've enjoyed our conversation. I encourage people to check it out. I encourage people to look and feel and open photography books in general. The printed medium of photography is something that is, less experienced, and it changes the whole thing from looking at a picture on your phone when you're flipping through a book of beautifully printed images. And I really applaud you for getting this book made and continuing to make work like this, because it's important. And I've enjoyed our conversation, and thanks for coming in.
As have I. I'm sorry about the coughing occasionally.
Don't worry about that.
But no, it was great. I feel like we were just warming up. Like I said, if I get going, we could talk till next Thursday. So
well,
maybe another time we'll do a follow-up.
You're only my 6th episode, so like maybe next season we'll have Craig returns.
Do a follow-up. That all sounds great. And yeah, I've had a great time. I really enjoyed it. Thanks for thinking of me.
Yeah. And for you listening, please go to my YouTube channel where you can see the full video, or wherever you get your podcasts. Please support this show and support artists. You need to tell them, like you heard here Craig say, the woman at the developing shop came from the back and said, hey, you've got a great eye for this. And that started his whole career. So if you see somebody in your life who's making something that is even remotely good, encourage them, because you never know, you might start them on a path of greatness.
You need more art, and I think that's a great idea to encourage people. And just to touch on what you were saying about books, that's how I learned photography. I went to the library and the bookstore in Barnes & Noble and got a bunch of books on photography by Cartier-Bresson and Elliot Erwitt, and I just went through them and really internalized it all.
It's fun. So when I was 19, I'm showing my age now, but this was like 2002, 2003. I graduated high school in 2002. And I did the same thing. I went to the library and I checked out all the books on photography. But I'm ADHD, so I never read a damn thing. I just checked them out, right. And then I went out and I took a roll of film and came back, and there'd be like 1 or 2 exposures on there that actually came out. And I just basically, stubbornly just kept shooting until I got an image that looked okay.
Well, see, something in you made you keep going forward.
Yeah, it was all having those library late fees for books. They were all like technical books, and
Right.
then eventually I was checking out more photographic books from.
Yeah, that's what I discovered, man, because I don't know where I heard that bit of advice, but I went right to a store and it's basically find photograph books of the type of photography, the genre that you like, and then get good at it. You'll internalize it, and you'll get good at it, and copy them. I say copy them, because especially if you're doing street photography, it's never going to be the same. It's really not copying. You can't copy it because it's a whole different thing.
Yeah.
And if you do that for a period of time, your own style, your own vision will start to emerge, and
Yeah.
then you'll have your own way of seeing
It's
things.
just like literature, right? You don't copy Hemingway, but
Right, but you can be influenced by him, and maybe you think you're copying him, but you're never going to copy Hemingway.
Yeah.
And
the guy who taught fashion photography for a lot of years at Art Center, and I took his classes many times as I could, Paul Jasmine, he's gone now, rest in peace. But how he taught that fashion class was in the studio. We could check out our own little spaces and do our own little shoots, but we would meet around a table this size, and there was just books and books and books and magazines piled up, and every time you were stuck, he would be like, pick up a book, sit on the bench, smoke a cigarette, and get inspired.
it totally does it. I used to take a look at a book before I'd go out shooting. you know, especially if I was in the doldrums and felt like I wasn't getting anything. I was in a slump, like the Dodgers.
You got the yips?
I never really got the yips, but just got in a slump.
Don't talk to me about that. I'm a Mariners fan. They just got blown out 22-0.
Are you kidding me?
Yeah.
Oh, my God. Oh, well, we won't talk about baseball.
Yeah.
Anyway,
All right.
thanks a million.
Thank you.
I really enjoyed it.
That's In the Static. If this conversation meant something to you, share it with someone who needs to hear it. Subscribe wherever you listen. New episodes whenever the signal comes through.